In January 1998, one of the most tragic diving incidents of Australia's history took place when two American divers disappeared from a dive boat while diving the Great Barrier Reef in northern Queensland, Australia. There are plenty of facts that make this case much more than an ordinary diving accident. Over the years, numerous explanations have been given to make sense of these disappearances, but what did actually happen? Who were these divers? How did they disappear? And why even after 26 years, no one knows for sure what happened in the Great Barrier Reef in January of 1998? This is the story of the Great Barrier Reef tragedy. The disappearance. On the 25th of January 1998, 34 years old Thomas Lonergan along with his 28-year-old wife Eileen departed from Cairns Backpackers Hostel in a BTS bus company bus for the short trip to Port Douglas. From there, they were booked to go on a dive boat called Outer Edge. Now, the Lonergans were basically from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and had just completed their tour as Peace Corps volunteers in the South Pacific on the island of Tuvalu. Before returning to the USA, they decided to take part in some diving on the Great Barrier Reef. So the duo arrived at Port Douglas and boarded the Outer Edge, a diving boat that was licensed to carry at least 26 passengers. On that day, the boat was under the command of the owner Jeffrey and Jack Narin. After some time in the Outer Edge, headed out with 26 passengers to the St. Crispin Reef, which was about 38 nautical miles northeast of Port Douglas. Like any normal diving tour, the Lonergans did 2 dives on the first reef in this area, and about at 3 p.m., a third dive was started at a dive site called Fish City. Now, according to another diver named Richard Trigson, who was also on the trip, the Lonergans advised the diving instructor Miss Catherine Traverso that they would go off and do their own thing, a practice that's fairly common and is often done by experienced divers. After some time, all of the divers except the Lonergans came back to the boat, and it is alleged that a head count was conducted and 26 passengers were counted to be present. However, the boat's diver master logbook at the end of the dive did not have any detail about the Lonergans' dive. Now, after this alleged count, the boat then departed to the St. Crispin Reef and returned to Port Douglas without waiting for the Lonergans to return to the boat. When the boat arrived at the dock, the crew noticed that there was at least one bag left behind by the passengers, but no investigations were made in this regard. In addition to this, the boat was also missing 2 tanks and 2 weight belts, which again, no one noticed. The realization. Soon after according to plan, the bus from BTS arrived to take the Lonergans back to their hotel. The diver, Norman Stiggin, went back to the BTS office at about 5:30 p.m. and reported to the owner of BTS that the Lonergans were not waiting for him when he arrived at the wharf. He also reported that he looked for the couple in nearby locations and couldn't find them anywhere. To make the suspicion of their disappearance even clearer, there were also 2 pairs of shoes belonging to the Lonergans that were not collected from the dive ship when the boat returned. The next day, on the 26th of January 1998, 2 weight belts were discovered at Crispin Reef by a diver on the Outer Edge when it returned to the same dive site with different divers. On Tuesday, the 27th of January, more than 48 hours after the Outer Edge had returned to Port Douglas, the crew of the boat noticed the dive bag on the boat. When the bag opened, it had things that belonged to the couple, including their papers. This was the time when Mr. Nairn, the owner of the diving company, called the police, 51 hours after the Lonergans were left on the reef. The search. On the 28th of January, a search party consisting of 17 aircraft, helicopters, and boats began the search. Unfortunately, the party didn't find any sign of the Lonergans despite the search continuing for many days. Almost a week later, on the 5th of February, Mr. Lonergan's BCD, a sort of jacket used to maintain buoyancy at depth, was found near the Indian Heads, a site that's 10 kilometers north of Cooktown, which is further than 105 kilometers north of Port Douglas. There was no tank attached to the BCD. After some time, Mr. Lonergan's green and gray wetsuit was found when it washed ashore near Indian Heads. It was torn from the buttocks region, presumably these tears caused by a shark. Even later, a slate was found on a beach, and this was confirmed as being Lonergan's from the things written on it. All of the evidence confirmed that the Lonergans were missing and most probably dead. What actually happened? Now, one thing to understand is that diving activities in the area surrounding the reef are fairly common, so the happening of such a tragedy at a common tourist site makes this even more controversial. But what actually happened? First, let us take a look at some of the established facts. Now, there's no doubt that the Lonergans were left behind at St. Crispin Reef. Similarly, there is no doubt that the Outer Edge returned to Port Douglas without realizing that the Lonergans were missing, and even though their belongings were still in the boat, the owner or the crew of the boat didn't bother to do a proper head count or notice that 2 of their guests were missing. Additionally, the 2 missing scuba tanks and weight belts were also not noticed. Now, most of the experts with enough diving experience in the area believe that the couple went for a longer dive than the others on the trip, or they ended up down current from the boat that could not attract the attention of the crew. The crew obviously did not do a proper head count and left. When the couple resurfaced and saw the boat was heading away or already gone, they dropped their weight belts and started waiting for them to return, which they didn't. They had no option to swim, as even the nearest site was 6 kilometers away, which was impossible to swim to in that sort of current. The only option in this case was waiting. As the next day passed, they would become very dehydrated from the heat. After some time, the couple would have died, either because of dehydration or by simply falling asleep and drowning. Judging by the condition of Miss Lonergan's suit, there's a fair possibility that a shark or sharks may have attacked them, which explains why their bodies were never found. This is obviously pure guesswork, but there's a fair chance that this is what happened that year. Who is responsible? 8 months after the incident, on Friday the 10th of October 1998, the coroner Mr. Nunnan announced that Thomas and Eileen Lonergan died at sea from either drowning, exposure to a shark attack sometime between 8 a.m. on the 26th of January 1998 and the 2nd of February 1998. His investigation committed to the owner of the diving company, Jeffrey Ian Jack Nairn, to stand trial for manslaughter over the deaths of Thomas and Eileen Lonergan. The trial of Jack Nairn began next year on the 8th of November 1999. However, the court decided that Mr. Nairn was not guilty. He died on the 31st of December 2015 at the age of 59. Rumors and conspiracies. Just like any other tragedy, this case too has its fair share of conspiracy theories and rumors. Most well known is the couple faking their disappearance, as they didn't want to go back to the US or live the life that they were currently living. Another rumor was that the couple had committed suicide as they were facing serious trouble in their married life and saw this as a way out. However, it can be possible that these rumors were started by people associated with the Outer Edge Dive Company or the Queensland dive industry to shift blame away from the operator. To this day, this incident remains to be quite controversial, and why shouldn't it be? Even if the rumors are believed to be, the fact remains that the Outer Edge Company left 2 divers out on the Great Barrier Reef and did not notice this or report it to the police for more than 2 full days. They didn't do a proper head count, notice the bags of their own equipment. Similarly, when the bus driver informed them about the absence of the couple, the company still didn't take notice. If you ask us, all of this is more than enough to put the blame on the company. However, on the other hand, was the couple right to go on the dive by themselves? Were they right to go further away compared to other divers? I guess we'll never know.